Though self-help housing existed before the federal government started financing programs, the current model, called mutual self-help housing, is a government program intended to help communities of low-income individuals and families work together to build their own homes. The labor they put into building is known as sweat equity and lowers the cost of home ownership. Affordable credit options are not readily available for low-income people, so the United States Department of Agriculture's Rural Development Agency offers low-interest 502 loans, which are then administered by local nonprofit organizations. Let's look into some historical examples of projects that demonstrate the history of self-help housing. Collective building was nothing new. However, the roots of modern self-help programs in the United States began in 1937 in southwestern Pennsylvania. A community of unemployed miners were struggling economically after the Great Depression. They were raising their families in poor living conditions in rented housing that was dominated by the coal companies. To give them better shelter and a sense of independence, Homer Morris and the American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker organization, decided to help them build their own homes. The AFSC organized the families into a cooperative association. To pay for the materials and land, this group of miners took out loans from the AFSC and worked together to build each other's houses, with their sweat equity as the down payment. After they moved into their newly built homes, they paid off the debt in monthly payments, and eventually the homes became theirs. 50 families built one another's homes in pursuit of establishing a self-sustaining community, which they called pencraft. During and after World War II, the AFSC sought to spread the pencraft model to other communities. In Indianapolis, Indiana, Cleo Blackburn, the director of the social services organization Flanner House, initiated the first urban self-help housing program. The organization bought a 178-acre plot of land from the Indianapolis Redevelopment Commission to start a self-help housing project called Flanner Homes, Inc. The purpose was for moderate-income Black families who weren't normally able to access mortgage credit or afford down payments to become homeowners. Flanner Homes, Inc. was controversial both due to the dislocation of extremely low-income Black communities as well as discrimination in the building permit process. Despite backlash, 360 homes were ultimately built for Black families by 1965, and the project paved the way for minorities to gain access to mortgage credit in the city. It is now a historic preservation district. But self-help housing always prospered more in rural settings. The focus of self-help programs shifted to rural communities, particularly farm workers who were the poorest house group in the country. Most of the early self-help projects were unsustainable due to insecure funding sources. The AFSC turned to a more reliable option, the federal 502 loan. The regulations of this direct loan for low-income homeowners were expanded in 1961 to include non-farm rural citizens. The first USDA-financed self-help project through the 502 loan was utilized by migrant farm workers in Goshen, California. The ground broke on 3 homes in 1963. Lilia G. Jimenez was one of those first 3 homeowners. Lilia was living in poverty along with many other farm workers, though built the home with her husband and children and lived there for over 50 years. The expansion of the 502 loan opened the door for rural workers like Lilia to have access to a permanent source of mortgage financing. The model was successful and spread to other migrant communities in Central California. The AFSC helped establish self-help enterprises, known as SHE, a nonprofit that would run and streamline the 502 loan self-help housing program. Another important shift in self-help housing was the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1965, which authorized Section 523 self-help technical assistance. Self-help housing spread and popped up in different North American communities, from African American migrants in New Jersey to Puerto Rican mushroom pickers in Pennsylvania. The 523 grant was important as it could be used for administrative costs, tools, and training, allowing mutual self-help housing to grow even more. Though the self-help housing model was spreading, there were various obstacles in the mid to late 1900s. When the Nixon administration enacted a moratorium on low-income housing subsidies, nonprofits in the rural housing sector, including the Rural Housing Association, sued, and eventually the subsidies were brought back. Additionally, since many of the self-help homeowners were racial minorities, Many borrowers face discrimination from white landowners, loan administrators, and in certain situations, the KKK. Despite policy changes and racism, self-help project organizers charged on. The self-help program continued and is still a popular option for low-income families and individuals today. Currently, around 100 organizations in 40 states and territories take part in the Mutual Self-Help Housing Program. An example of a current model can be found in the small town of Moab, Utah. Community Rebuilds, an affordable housing nonprofit, utilizes the self-help program to build energy-efficient straw bale houses for low-income residents. They build with dirt-cheap materials, including locally sourced sand, clay, and straw. The utilities cost 85% less than average, resulting in long-term affordability and sustainability. Community Rebuilds also runs a natural building internship program, so emerging young professionals can learn about natural building and affordable housing. Hopefully, we will see more low-income housing programs using greener models in the future. Since the USDA started funding self-help programs, over 50,000 homes have been built. Self-help housing is an affordable option for low-income families to become homeowners, build their wealth, and raise their families. They gain skills during the process and build connections to their neighbors and community. At the core of self-help housing is the notion that resilient, stable communities are developed by neighbors helping neighbors and uplifting one another. Thanks for watching.